What's going on, team? Welcome back along to round 2 of Super Rugby 2019. It is preview day yet again, so let's get stuck into our matches for this upcoming weekend. As always, we bring along special guests and another newcomer to the channel. Great pleasure of mine to welcome for the first time Ryan to the channel. Now, Ryan, you've got a storied history, a bit of a expert, I guess you could almost call yourself, with your little Tribe Sports app. Tell everyone about yourself, I guess, get a little bit of intro as to what you're about.
Yeah, so working for the Tribe Sports app, and we're covering a whole bunch of sports. So if you haven't got it, make sure you download it in the Play Store or the App Store. Not just for your rugby, but all your main sporting codes. So we've got plenty on at the moment, and it's keeping me busy. But hey, that's what we love to do. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no worries. Thank you very much for coming. It is my pleasure, definitely. I use the app all the time, so it's a great app. So if you follow any sports at all, I use it to watch follow the A-League, follow the rugby. It gives me updates on the Warriors because I really can't put myself through watching it. All those sorts of things. So if you like any sort of sports, I mean, you guys do absolutely everything. So go check it out, download it, and you are absolutely sorted. I mean, even the teams. Like, we're recording this midweek. We don't have all the teams, but the teams that are named are already on the app. So that's what I use to get around it as well. Absolutely great little app. So let's get stuck into it. We have, of course, our full complement of 7 games this weekend. And firstly, before we get underway, 7 matches last week, of course, in round 1. 6 away wins. What did you make of that?
Wow, yeah, I mean it's a tipster's nightmare, I guess. With the away teams getting up, there are a couple of the home teams that probably feel aggrieved that they didn't win. Which yeah, you got to take those chances at home. I think home wins, particularly in the derby games, are pretty important. So yeah, I think there's a few teams that'll be looking to bounce back after letting games slip.
Yep, and there's quite a few people that are a bit unhappy about how their SuperBru picks went. So let me just get this, because I think I got third. So I think I rightfully deserve to be able to put the yellow cap on this week. I didn't get it, but I'm going to wear it for this segment. It was a great tipping week for me. You can see by the table, I got third. I got third in the round. That's like almost my best ever finish. So I'm pretty happy about that. And what's even better, I'm not going to pick on you just yet, Ryan, but I'm going to pick on Paul, who finished way down the list in 47th. 47th. Oh, that is great. I should have had him back on just to give him sticks about that. But you got 17th from your picks in round 1. A few didn't go your way, but you recovered pretty well, I'd have to say.
Well, the one that cost me was having the Blues by 1 point. So riding that Harry Plummer penalty, I'm like, he kicks this, so they win by 1. I'm a genius, and it wasn't to be. So it was, yeah, the Blues and the Brumbies let me down. But I'm happy with where I'm sitting after 1 round.
It's a solid start, I'll give you that. And I mean, picking the Blues to win that would have been bigger than picking the Highlanders to win that opening game, or even the Rebels to win against the Brumbies as well, I reckon. But that would have been catastrophic for my picks, I can tell you that. Let's get into this round's games. Of course, the Rebels are off with the bye, so we kick things off on Friday night with the Highlanders back at home for the first time this season. I guess I could take the head off. I shouldn't wear it the whole show. They're up against the Reds, who haven't actually played yet this season. Now, interesting stats. I actually did a little bit of stat research for this one here for you. The last time the Reds beat the Highlanders back in 2016. So that is a bit of a surprise. But what more surprising is that the Reds have actually beaten the Highlanders more times in the last 10 meetings, 6-4 between those two sides to the Reds. So that was quite a shock to me as well. But 5 changes to the Highlanders. We've seen their team. They have named it. You think this is a side that's going to be tough to win, tough to beat at home?
Yeah, and I mean, the quality of those changes is pretty significant. 4 of those guys coming in have played for the All Blacks in some capacity. And they'll be riding high after a big derby win, probably a get-out-of-jail card from last week. Yeah, and I think it's always hard to judge a team that's kind of coming in off the first round bye. Reds had an interesting preseason, 2 close losses, one to the Rebels and one to the Chiefs. So I think the Highlanders have to go in as favourites. They're battle tested, and the Reds, whether they can get up for this first game or whether they need that hit out first is going to be the big question.
Yeah, it was a mighty performance from the Highlanders. That's all I could put that down to. Gutsy. I mean, I look back at that and say, if they didn't get that red card, would have they won that game? I don't know if they would have.
Yeah, and it's funny how that sometimes works. You get, I guess it's a cliche that guys give 110%, and it's not possible. But if you've got sort of 15 guys going at 90, and then you have 14 guys going at 100 when they need they need to lift because there's a man down, sometimes that can actually lead to an improved performance, especially when they don't have to do it sort of for a long period of time. So yeah, it was a huge win. I think that's the kind of one that can galvanise a team early in the season, and they may look back at that win at the end of the year and go, that was a crucial 4 points.
Yeah, huge for their season. You've already spoken a bit about the Reds, but we talked about their bye in the first round. Kicking off on the road's not going to really help them at all, but I'm surprised they've been in the media a lot this week, the Reds, talking about how Brad Thorne's really been putting them through their paces, and they are better prepared than they would have been had they played a round one matchup. Are you buying into that, or is that just a load of garbage?
I think that's just spin, isn't it? They want to show a degree of optimism and a degree of confidence going into their first game. But when it comes down to it, it's how they perform on the park that's where it all happens, and that's the important.
Yeah. So the Highlanders at home, obviously for this one. I think the home team's going to get it done. What's your pick?
Yeah, I've got them to win and reasonably comfortably too. So I've penciled them in by 12.
Ooh, now that's a big margin. I'm only going the Highlanders by 4, but it's strange these days, isn't it? 4 points doesn't seem like much when you write it down, but the way games change and flow, it can be somewhat of a convincing victory, yet not looking like it on the scoreboard. I think the Reds are going to come out a bit firing, a bit pumped up. I mean, they've had a week off and they're going to be roaring into the action. Highlanders, though, I think they'll, like you say, those changes are huge. Having guys like Aaron Smith starting now is going to set that tempo a bit higher for them right from the outset, so they should be good to get the win. And if it's more than 4, I'm more than happy to give you that extra point on SuperBru, and if the Highlanders win it more convincingly, that is great for me as well. So that's game 1 of round 2 complete. We move over across to Tokyo. It's the Sunwolves' first game in Tokyo, and they're up against the Waratahs. Now, these two sides have only met 3 times, and all 3 of them has been 50-plus points scored by the Waratahs. The Sunwolves first, a home team. They look quite short of where they should be at this stage, at any stage of the competition, to be fair. 15 minutes is about all they really competed for against the Sharks. Do you think this team's going to improve before they get their internationals back, or is this a status quo for them for the season?
I think there will be an improvement, and I think they're a team that really didn't have a pre-season at all. They had a couple of hit-outs against local sides. So you would expect that even without their internationals back, they should improve on last week. One thing that I thought last week that really let them down was their discipline, though, and they just never allowed themselves to get into that game. Even after the good start, they just made life really easy for the Sharks. Too many penalties. So that's the kind of thing that, you can improve in a week, I think, back on side and not giving away those cheap penalties. So yeah, I do think they have improvement in them, but they need to sort that discipline out.
Yeah, they're a team that can certainly step it up if they want to, especially in the back. So, I mean, it's an impressive side that can do stuff. They just need to get that continuity together. I think Hayden Parker's last season was amazing for him, and he's just continued on this year. I think overall he's been a pretty big loss to the Highlanders. Imagine if they still had him down there, he would be their number 1 with Sopawanga leaving. Yeah,
and I guess with the way that the Sunwolves play, they like to play up tempo, and having that steadying hand at first 5, it's not indifferent to the Highlanders. When they play on the roof. So I think he would have slotted in there as a perfect replacement for Lima.
Yeah. Up against them, though, the Waratahs, I mean, they've got to be favourites to win. But what's in the focus of their mind here? Is it into Tokyo, out of Tokyo, on with life? As little damage as possible. Try not to get anyone injured. I hope the side was going to be named by the time we did this for the Waratahs, but do you suspect they might name a touch of a weakened team for this one?
I don't think so. I don't think they can afford to. They let last week slip. They need to bounce back. I think, too, that the Sunwolves don't bring that sort of physicality that you'd worry about in terms of looking a week ahead. If you were travelling to Christchurch or something and expecting to be beat up, maybe you then kind of rotate guys at this stage of the season. But I think the Sunwolves, kind of in high tempo, expansive game. So, yeah, I think they really need to pick up a win. They probably need to pick up 5 points. So I expect them to be strength.
Yeah, they do. They need everything they can get. Because of that, I'm going Waratahs. I'm going by 14 is my margin. You got similar?
Yeah, I've got them by 17.
17. Well, that's pretty close. I'll take that one. We're 2 from 2. We're actually agreeing. That's a good start. Normally this doesn't happen with my picks, but it's good way to kick things off. Next up, we're back in New Zealand. It's our first game in AMI Stadium. It's the Crusaders up against the Hurricanes. This one is a mouth-watering prospect. What this could deliver possibly could be amazing, but will it deliver?
Yeah, I think it will. I think, like history just shows us, that these New Zealand derbies are just, they are the premium content from Super Rugby, and I don't think anyone would complain if that was all we got. You get the cliche come out that they're like test matches. With the number of All Blacks that'll be playing, you understand why it's that way. Big ask for the Crusaders to open up with 2 derby games, but they'll be fizzing after picking up a hard-earned win against the Blues. They were challenged up front. They responded, which I think is a huge. It's the Crusaders' way. They were put under the pump. They found a way to win. A little bit lucky, I guess, but hey, so were the Hurricanes. So this is a big game between 2 teams that squeaked out wins in week 1.
Yeah, the recent history too interesting. That the Hurricanes are actually 6-4 in the last 10 up, but the last 3 meetings have all been the Crusaders. Obviously, the way the season's gone, but the Hurricanes have failed to score more than 20 points in the last 3 losses that they've done. So clearly, they need to attack to actually have a chance in this matchup. They're not going to beat the Crusaders 12-10 or something like that. They're going to have to really pull it out there, which leads me to the point, who's going to be starting in the number 10 jumper? Will Beauden Barrett be lining up?
Well, the media's, hinted that he might be. I guess Steve Hansen, if he had his way, would be saying, nah, you're still on your honeymoon. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're more likely to keep him out based on the fact that they did get the win last week. I suspect that if he does play even, it would be off the bench, given that he hasn't had any game time at all. So maybe they slot him into the 22 jersey and let Fletcher Smith do his thing. And then you can make a call during the game. If you've got a lead sort of through 50 minutes, you can stick with what you've got. But if you need that bit of genius to come off the bench and make an impact, then you've got Beauden there in the wings. So, yeah, I'm intrigued about what will happen tomorrow with the team naming.
Yeah, they're really pumping it up, aren't they? Interesting. Do you think, though, that the Hurricanes actually need him to stand a decent chance for actually winning this game? If they come out early and said, no, Barrett's out, do you think that would really tip it massively to the Crusaders' favour?
I think the way I want to answer this is that he makes a massive difference no matter what. But the way I see this game going, I don't think the Hurricanes win it with their backs. I think they really need a big performance up front. That's where the Blues were probably surprising last week, in that they took it to the Crusaders with their pack and actually found a few weaknesses and were able to get the ascendancy, not through the whole game, but for moments that kept them in that game. And I think that's where the Hurricanes really need to focus this week, is just trying to match it up front with them. And if they can do that, then you lay the platform for someone like Barrett to work his magic. So, Yes, he would make a difference if he was playing, but I think there's more important parts of the field for them to focus on.
I think the guys at the TAB are just sweating on this call of whether he's going to play or not, because I'd imagine it's got to change the odds. They'll be sitting there going, Barrett, $1.25. Oh no, $1.06. Oh, what is it going on? Surely they must be absolutely killing them at the moment. I'm going for a home win. Crusaders for me. What have you got?
Yeah, I've got the Crusaders by 7. That's not locked in, I guess. When the teams come out tomorrow, but I suspect it'll still be a home win, and I guess it's just how tight it'll be. I can't see it being a blowout either way. These derby games really are, but I think the home team gets up.
Yep, I've got the Crusaders by 8, so we've gone very similar on that one. Key guy for me, I think, going on from what you said about the pack, is Adi Savia. Monumental in that round 1 game. Single-handedly was the player in that pack that dragged them to that victory. So he's going to be massive against Crusaders if they're going to pull that victory out of the bag. Let's make our way over the ditch for our next matchup. The Brumbies versus the Chiefs, GIO Stadium. Interesting matchup. Two teams coming off losses as well. But the Chiefs haven't actually faced the Brumbies in Australia since 2016. So it's been a few years, and that was a pretty comprehensive win as well. The last time the Brumbies beat the Chiefs, 2014, which was a 2-pointer, 32-30. The question really is how will the Chiefs deal with how the Brumbies play? They like to keep in the forwards, they like to maul it, they like to use what should be considered to be their strength as well. Are the Chiefs going to match them up there? Are the Brumbies actually going to get dominance there against the Chiefs side?
Well, the question here, I mean, last week I was talking about the Brumbies, that's how they were going to beat the Rebels, and I just think their forward pack failed to fire. They lost opportunities. They had key lineouts that they didn't execute. Losing Pocock was a massive blow early, and replacing him is a huge task for anyone. So whether he's there or not, I didn't see any news on it. I think this is the hardest game for me to call this week. I think how both teams respond from a loss is going to be important. The Brumbies pack, though, needs to get dominance to win games. They've got a backline with a few sort of strike weapons, but overall it's lacking a bit of quality. And the Chiefs, if they can get decent ball, we know the danger some of their backs pose, even if they're in an experienced backline.
Yeah, what surprised me in that first Brumbies game too was the preseason and how well players like Kieran Draney were playing. When he burst onto the scene, he was amazing. He was really good for a couple of seasons. He's dropped off massively, I think, over the last couple of years. I've been pretty critical of him. And I was excited that the fact that he could actually be coming into some good form, which they need. Australia, to be fair, needs as well, because they need that sort of player that he is to be good. But I found him pretty absent in that opening game against the Rebels. So they need more from him too in their back line to be a bit better. Pocock was actually something I was going to bring up. I haven't seen anything on whether he's going to be fit. It was just HIA. Was it a head knock that he went off with?
Yeah, so I guess he's under protocol, and whether he passes, I guess we find out tomorrow. And be interesting to see how they sort of rejig their pack if he is out, because Samu came on the weekend and played, but he's not a 7. So yeah, it's I suspect if Pocock sits out, they bring in a specialist 7. Samu either starts at 6 or 8 or drops back to the bench as that impact forward again. That was a huge loss, and I guess when you're trying to read into this week, it makes it hard. Not playing with a specialist open side. But yeah, they just needed to execute better last week, and I think that they gifted away a number of points to the Rebels. So, they're a team that on paper should be better than they are, and I think that's been the case for a couple of seasons now.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be key whether Pocock actually plays or not too, because the Chiefs are a team, like you talked about, an experienced backline, but a pretty explosive and exciting backline as well. And if they get quick ball, if they can get it in now, those rucks and the mauls and the scrums, if they get dominance through those guys, they are going to be super dangerous. And last week, we've seen the Brumbies really didn't care too much for defending. They just attacked, and the Rebels much the same, especially with the first half. If they keep that up, surely this is going to be a rampaging Chiefs win, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I can't disagree there. I mean, the Chiefs, if they get decent ball, they've unearthed I think a special talent in Etini Nene Saturo. If the likes of him and Balin Sullivan and co get good ball, Anton Leonard-Brown was impressive last week. So, yeah, the Brumbies pack needs to step up. The Chiefs pack have got some quality players as well, as we know. So, yeah, this is a good battle, but I've gone the away team.
Yeah, I have too. One factor that has been a bit like a Bowden Barrett effect, this one, Damien McKenzie. Any chance of him appearing? I think much like Barrett, it's going to be pretty unlikely.
Yeah, and I guess the performance they got from Auburn Leisure last week was I guess satisfactory. He didn't set the world on fire. The biggest issue with him is he doesn't kick goals, and that was a problem last week, and they left some points on the park that could have cost them. I guess the option is if Debrasini is fit and whether he comes back in, but I haven't seen any update on that either. So again, an interesting team naming tomorrow, and a few questions to be answered.
I did find that Brad Weber quite humorous when he posted on Twitter today with the Greg Jacksons.
I did see that. That was good.
I mean, that sort of thing goes one or two ways, doesn't it? You either laugh or cry about it. It's good to see that the guy's got a bit of a sense of humour and can actually have a chuckle about it. Poor fella. He got thrown the short stick, didn't he?
He's great value on social media. So if you don't follow Brad Weber on Twitter, you need to. He's great.
So Chiefs, I'm going Chiefs by 2. Similar?
Chiefs by 6 for me.
Oof, 6. Not quite the 7+, but we'll let it slide. So we're still agreeing. I don't like this too much at all. We're going over to Africa now.
This could be it. This could be it.
This could be it. Hey, it's Sharks. Tell me, I should have asked this before we started, but who is your team? Who is your number one?
I am a Blues fan.
You are a Blues fan.
I grown up in the North Harbour region, so when Super Rugby started, I was a Chiefs fan, and then of course we moved to the Blues. So I only claim one Blues title because before when they won those first couple, I was with the Chiefs. So yeah, that's my team.
I knew you were a North Harbour man, but I didn't know what way you swung on that side. Right, so your team's in action.
Despite historical wrongdoings, I am a Blues fan.
So last week would have been particularly difficult for you to take as well.
It's. I think I put out a tweet that said, people talk about the Blues not being able to beat New Zealand teams, but they beat themselves most weeks. So again, it's a little bit like the Brad Weber thing. You can either cry or you can have a laugh about it. And there were positive signs last week. But we should have got the win, and that's the gutting thing.
Oh, there were massively good signs last week. Massively good. You can't see the positives out of a performance like that. Then you're probably a bit too cynical, I've got to say. So they're in action. They're off to Africa. They're facing the Sharks. The stats don't read well for the poor old Blues. They've won 1 of their last 10 versus the Sharks. In the last 3 meetings in New Zealand, it's 1 win, 2 losses. 40-63 last year. Big numbers, huge numbers. Last time in South Africa was a 22-20, which that's pretty good. You'll definitely take that. But the Sharks at home, they played the Sunwolves in round 1. How much can you read into that? There's not much going on there, is there?
No, and I think if you watch that game, you would have seen that they weren't actually that sharp. And for periods of the game, the Sunwolves were competitive and actually gave them a few issues. But it looked like one of those performances, like we'll go in, we'll grab our win, and then we'll get out of there.
Yeah.
The result that I probably look more to is pre-season where they drew with the Bulls. Now, again, how much do you read into the Bulls' week 1 performance? Were they really good or were the Stormers really bad? If the Bulls were really good, then the Sharks draw with them pre-season probably bodes well. So yeah, it is a hard thing to read into, and this is the big challenge. I think the early weeks of a competition like this is it's like do those week 1, week 2 results actually count for much, or do you have to wait and see how teams are actually travelling through a longer time period?
And what does preseason mean? Like,
Yes.
that was what further on from that what you just said was what I was going to carry on with there. The preseason seemed to me like it was more of a difficult hit out for the Sharks, and you can't read into that either. Like, that doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you were they executing all their game plans. Were they playing 100% or 110%, as cliches go. You just don't know what is fully going through there. And the Sunwolves opening up, I agree with you. They seem to, once they got that lead, they got the dominance, they had asserted themselves there, the gas was taken off, I do think, and they just kind of cantered through to their victory. But you don't want to take too many hits. I mean, that could have gone bad if they lost a couple of key players. It could have easily gone pear-shaped for them. But they'll be happy. They're in and out, done, got the points, and they're back at home now, which is good for them, but terrible for the Blues. Round 2, they're on the road. I mean, how much of a difference would have it made if they won against Crusaders?
Oh, I mean, massive. You just can't. I don't think you can put a value on sort of a derby win and ending that winless streak. But in saying that, I kind of think it's good that they get out of the country. They let a game go that they could have won. I think the worst thing would have been to have followed up with another derby game and put all the pressure sort of straight into week 2. They get out of New Zealand, they get a 1-game trip to South Africa where it's not at altitude. The Sharks are travelling home as well, so there's not a massive advantage. They've got to come back from Singapore. So I think in terms of if the Blues can sneak an upset in South Africa on the road, this is kind of the ideal situation for them. And if they can take all those positives out of last week, the way they stayed in that fight, there was times in the game where I thought they were ripe for the picking for the Crusaders to just walk away with the game. Up down 12-3, man in the bin, Crusaders attacking their line. That Blues teams of the past would have conceded there and gone on to get flogged, but they battled hard, repelled them, went to the break down 9, came out firing in the second half and made a game of it. So. Yeah, I'm optimistic that they can give this a shake.
They did transform, I think, in the second half. A completely different looking side. They would have just fallen away normally, the Blues. But like we said before, heaps of positives to take out of it. But I do reckon, though, if they went over there with that win, a win over the defending champions, the biggest rival, the Canterbury-Auckland rivalry, bang, that's double whammy. Now we're off to South Africa. We'll beat those fellas up too over there. That just changes your confidence, your mindset. You go into a game believing you could win because you've just beaten the best team. And you could beat anyone now. Now they go there and there's just still that 5% shadow of a doubt in their mind that I think could just make all the difference in the world for this Blues team who, let's say, confidence hasn't always been their strongest attribute to have on their side in the past few years for them. I'm going to be disappointed if you're not picking the Blues to win this.
I have gone the Blues. My finger hovered over this one for a while, and I sort of thought back, and I thought last season, the Blues struggled in the derby games. They had some inexcusable losses, and then out of nowhere, they won games that they just had no rights winning. They beat the Waratahs in Sydney. They beat the Lions in Johannesburg. This week, they beat the Sharks in Durban.
I like your optimism. How big's your margin? How big are you going?
I've gone double figures. Blues by 10.
It gets better. It gets better and better. You're going to be the smartest rugby follower in the world if this comes off. I give you full rights, 100% to absolutely gloat to the end of the month about this victory if it comes off. I'm not sharing your confidence though. I got the Sharks not by 10 though. I'm still not going double figures, just by 6. But I do give the Blues a good shove at the sticker with it. I think they're going to have a good go. Definitely their confidence should be better. But I just wonder, come that final 10 minutes, those memories are going to come back when Plummer's standing over that ball 30 metres out, slight angle.
Well, see, I've got them by 10, so there's no pressure on that kick
Oh,
at the end.
dear. Poor old player. I feel sorry for that guy, to be completely honest. I mean, that was a heap of pressure put on a young guy on his debut right at the end of the game to come out. He was impressive in the Mitre 10 Cup, but, gee, that's got to be tough on him.
Yeah, I think the key kick was the conversion. I mean, if he kicks that and brings them level, you take a whole heap of pressure off that next kick. One, knowing you've kicked one, and two, knowing that it's the difference between a draw and a win rather than a loss and a win. So yeah, I think when he stood over that penalty, I was not confident. I was covering the game for Tribe, and I certainly hadn't penciled in the penalty notification. I was going to wait and see. So yeah, a shame he couldn't kick it, but hey, that's a good test for him, and see how he bounces back and grows from that.
Do you think they made an error bringing him on for Oteri Black, or so are they just stuck with a bit more of a tested guy?
Yeah, I was surprised he came on as early as he did, because it was around the 50-minute mark. And whether that's a case of Black maybe being a bit underdone, not sure. It'll be interesting to see how they use those two and Stephen Perofeta in the season, and how they rotate them and give them minutes, and whether Black's the starter for the majority, and then they use those other guys off the bench. But I was surprised that they threw a young guy into a pressure game so early. And in terms of his actual play, I thought he went all right, but kicking the goals, it's kind of what you need your 10 to do, and it's been an area of weakness for the Blues for some time. So yeah, disappointing that he couldn't kick that penalty, but yeah, we'll see how it affects him.
You live and learn.
That's
and learn.
right.
And as they say, pressure makes diamonds. So who knows where it could come from. Let's go over to Newlands, and we can go for the positives of the Blues to the abysmal that is the Stormers. I mean, I wrote down a few things here, but it all encases into three simple words, or two simple words, really. What happened?
Wow. I mean, last week with Paul on Driving Maul, I was talking up the Bulls. I said, this is the team that I think could be the surprise of the comp. So that made me look smart. But now, like I said, how much do you read into it? Did the Bulls just play really well? Are they as good as I think they could be? They're a strong team on paper. Or did the Stormers just fail to show up? It puts a lot of pressure on a team to be flogged in a derby game straight up, straight off the bat. So they need to go home. They need to regroup. They get a Lions team that we know are traditionally strong. They've been the pick of the South African sides for some time now. But they are coming home from Argentina. So, the Stormers need a big response. I don't think they've got it in them.
That is interesting. I mean, history doesn't favour them either. The Stormers haven't won against the Lions since 2015, and that was when the Lions were, starting to think about doing their little rise up. That's when those guys are starting to come through.
They were the Cubs then.
Yeah. And now they, a different side, and it's going to be really tough. I mean, they've got a really hard start to the season as well, because they've got 3 derby matches, and then they go on the bye. And they could easily come along to round 4 of the competition, into round 5, I guess, and they could be 0-3, nothing on the board at all, and season effectively could be done for them. There's huge pressure on them to pick up a derby victory in these opening 3 rounds.
Yeah, agreed. There's really nothing I can add to that. I think on paper, they look the weakest of the South African sides. In week 1 on the field, they were the weakest of the South African sides. And I'm throwing the Jaguares in there as well, with the African Conference. If they don't bounce back this week, it could be a long season for them.
Yeah, we know they don't travel very well, so nothing's going to come good from that either. They've been terrible in the last couple of years. The Lions, they have it all on their side, don't they? Everything is on their side for this one. But against the Jaguares, I thought they looked very professional in their approach to that game. I think they've stuffed up that trip to Argentina way too many times.
Well, every time.
Every time. Exactly. They've finally got into that game and thought, we've got to sort this out. And I think they look very good. And what really surprised me about that game, not that the Lions looked to dominate in the pack or in the forwards, but that the Jaguares allowed them to dominate that game so much in the forward packs. But I can't see this being anything less than a continuation on from what the Bulls started last week.
Yeah, I've got it a bit closer. I think the fact that they have to travel back from Argentina gives a little bit of something to the Stormers to maybe, grab some optimism from. But yeah, if they win this, it's a massive upset. I've got the Lions by 10.
Yeah, it will be a huge, huge turnaround indeed. I've got the Lions as well. I'm going just by 5. But, I always go cautious now because you never know what's going to happen. Stormers have got players. They've got players that can do things. But this Lions team, although they have lost a lot, they are still going to be up there when it comes to the end of the day for the South African Conference. One game to go, and we are back off to where we just talked about, off to Argentina again. The Jaguares are in action against the Bulls. Now, you spoke earlier about having a hard one to pick. I think this is potentially one of the hardest ones to pick because the Jaguares at home, normally you could say, with a bit of confidence, that they are a good side at home. They completely obliterated that confidence in me last week. And the Bulls, who you'd say, yeah, they're a bit average, completely obliterated that theory as well. Do you have a favourite going into this one? For me, this is the hardest to pick.
Yeah, it is a hard game to pick. I guess the confidence for me is that, I have been talking up the Bulls' chances this season. So that's kind of tipped it in their favour. I'm going to go with my gut and back up that analysis. But it is always hard to kind of pick a game like this. The Jaguares coming off a home loss, but to a good team, they need a response. And it's do they kind of follow it up and bounce back and improve? And then it's always hard for the Bulls to back up, a convincing win. Do they take confidence from it and really build on that momentum? Or do they get a little bit carried away with their performance and fail to back it up on the road? So not a team that's traditionally travelled well either. Pretoria is a bit of a fortress for them, but you go away from there and it's a bit different. So I agree this is a hard one to pick.
The recent meetings between the two sides have been interesting as well. The home side has always won the 4 meetings they've had so far. That gives you a bit of a favouritism towards the Jaguares. 1-1 last season, obviously home and away. But the Jaguares put 50 points on the Bulls at home last season. I don't know if I can see that quite happening again, especially how they played. I did talk about it a bit in the last matchup about how the Jaguares did play, but were you surprised about how their style of play? We know they liked to expand on the style of using their backs a bit more over recent years, kind of going away from the only forward dominated and as your backs are just tackle bags really, to actually having a bit of use out of them. But the way they just got completely trampled by the Lions, did that surprise you? Do you think this team is actually moving away completely from trying to dominate a game in the forwards to being a bit more of a razzle-dazzle side of Super Rugby?
Yeah, I think that the historical kind of, I guess now you call it a myth, of Argentinian sides being strong up front. We keep talking about, this vaunted Argentinian forward pack, etc. It just isn't reality anymore. And they have tried to go to an expansive game plan. They do have some dangerous backs, but if they can't match the Bulls up front, then those backs are going to be starved of possession, starved of opportunity. I think losing Nicolas Sanchez this year is going to be massive when we look back at the season. That's a huge loss for them. Not just with his goal kicking and the way he can keep the scoreboard ticking over, but the way he directs them around the park and gets them into the right areas. A really clever first 5 with a good balanced game. Filling his shoes is a real challenge for them, and I think he's going to be one of the bigger losses of the season for any team. So, yeah, I I'm not convinced that the Jaguares are going to be as troubling as they have been, even at home.
Yeah, and furthermore, what you just spoke about losing a guy like Sanchez, they're up against a guy like Pollard who put in, I think, a masterclass display, especially with the more behind-the-scenes sort of stuff that's been coming out on social media the last couple of days. I don't know if you've seen it, but the way he has been directing the likes of Speckman around the field, especially defensively. He is a general in that back line, and that's something that controls the game effectively. And you got that at 10. He is massively key for the Bulls side to do well. So I think the away team is going to get the job done. I've gone the Bulls by 4. Yourself?
Yeah, I've got the Bulls by 8. And I think it's interesting when you talk about Pollard because, talking about Sanchez as a balanced first five, I think Pollard is exactly that as well. And a lot of South African first fives that we've seen historically have been great, generals at kicking a team around the park. But he brings that whole package. He can ignite those outside backs, and the Bulls have got some dangerous ones of the likes of Roscoe Speckman, Warwick Gallant at fullback. You got Cornell Hendricks coming back in this week, Jesse Creel. So I think Pollard's key, and I've gone the Bulls by 8.
Bulls by 8. Yep, I couldn't agree with you more there. They do look a dangerous side, but the key is keeping them fit. Number 1, keep them fit, or there is going to be trouble back there for the Bulls as well. So that's going to be, a long season to see how they go. And even for the Springboks, that was a pretty open sort of jersey. I guess Yankees kind of had that, but he's never really convinced anyone that he is the man for that jersey, kind of being the best of the worst. They need Pollard to really be fit, and I think this season they need to start looking at guys like Willemser as well, who, I hope they don't keep like this, the Stormers, but I think he is going to be massive for their future in South Africa. But that is our last game. That is it. We are done for round number 2. We've agreed, I think, on every single match except for the Sharks and the Blues. So hopefully that won't pull us any closer. I'll keep my nice little top three space up there for me. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, being a guest on the show here. I hope everyone's enjoyed your thoughts and opinions. If you got your own, leave them in the comments below as per always. If you want to give any final words where people can abuse you for not picking their Sharks or anything like that, people like to be opinionated around here.
Yeah, you can give me a follow on Twitter at New York Nixon. Always up for a chat or a debate about rugby and plenty of other sports too. So don't be shy and come say hello.
Yep, I do follow him myself. He's a great tweeter of interesting things we can see on there. So go give him a follow as well. And of course, don't forget to get your phone out and go check out the Tribe Sports app, because I do use it myself. It is cool. You can see everything on there if my camera decides to focus. But it's a very cool little app to use. So go check that out and download it yourself. Thanks very much for joining us, Ryan. It's been awesome. Your views have been great. And we'll see you all for round 3. Who we'll have then, who knows? But until then, take care.